Managing people is hard enough. Now doing it during election season? Those in the US will know that I'm releasing this video on Election Day, presidential election day here in the US. Those outside the US may know that elections can get contentious in the US. So if being a people manager has its own challenges already, how do you deal with those in election season and on election day? In this short video, I'll talk about tips in two ways. One is how to think about managing your team. The other is things to keep in mind as a manager. So in election season, why can that feel so challenging for managers? Well, often because you're either expecting or have experienced conflicts. You may see those all the time on social media. You can look on the comments section of people battling it out. And so you may see already at work things that can lead to conflict. Email chains, meetings, all those sorts of things. So adding politics to that can lead to a flurry. And so when it comes to managing your team, you certainly have choices. And of course, always follow your organization's policies and their asks. But oftentimes, if you're not getting any guidance or you're thinking about things, just know. You certainly have the option to say nothing. And a lot of people will say, work is work. We should not be talking about top politics at work. And in some instances, you may see some conversations where you're like, it would have been much better that nobody ever brought politics up than to lead what that happened. But just knowing people do have very real lives. And so if you don't say anything, people may have those conversations, and sometimes they can be really unproductive. And so as the manager, as you think about leading and managing your team, oftentimes it's recognizing reality. And so if you do want to say something, again, it's Tuesday as I release this, and so it's unclear as I post this whether we'll know the results of the presidential election this evening or in the coming days, but just so saying to your teams, and sometimes it's painting it in real pictures, to say, yes, it's election season, and you all are very real people with very real lives in and out of work. And you may have political candidates you feel strongly about. Some may not feel as strongly. But knowing that we don't expect you to check who you are at the door and not be a real person, but knowing that when you come to work, there's things that we have in common. People want to come and they want to be respected as individuals. They want to work together and they don't want to worry about whether your candidate lost and you're worried that somebody else will come and throw it in your face the next day. Situations like where someone has exactly done that, of someone knew that somebody else supported another candidate and they came in and said things about it. It doesn't tend to lead to productive conversations at work or feelings when you leave work. And so just being mindful of that anything that you're thinking of doing, thinking how you'd feel on the other side if your candidate hadn't won. Also knowing some people really don't want to talk politics at work. And so if you're bringing up those conversations, it's not always the best idea if you don't know how someone feels, and assuming how someone feels, especially if you're incorrect. And then if you do bring it up, or if there's in conversations, if people do say, I'd rather not talk about it, respecting that. Because again, a lot of this, as we work together, and my role as a manager, is yes, to make sure that we get work done. But also, again, we're really real people. We want to come to work and have friendships or relationships that are based on trust and know that we have each other's back. It's harder to do that if you come and you bring politics, you're worried about how that'll be perceived. And so just knowing, if your candidate was the successful candidate, if they won their race, then I'm sure you do feel fantastic, and there's a lot of ways you can celebrate that. But just being mindful and keeping in mind, how would I feel if it didn't go that way in the other one? And that could sometimes be a guiding principle of how you think about that at work. And knowing that there's a lot more that we have in common. Again, things like being respectful to each other, collaborating, treating each other well, and getting things done and celebrating that are important at work. And so as a manager, my door is open. I'm happy to have conversations with you. But also knowing that as we think about how things like if you are upset about how the election went, you can come and talk to me. Or if things like you need to take time off, it's real. People can feel different ways. And so my job as a people manager is to help the team remember that it's important to work together, the things that we have in common, and that anytime you're feeling things, you don't need to hide them. You're never obligated to share anything at work, but I don't want you ever to be afraid to come and talk to me. So that can be helpful as a people manager. And sometimes people are like, well, now I have someone come in who's a person who believes completely different things than me. They're all distraught. But now am I supposed to just let them cry it out? Well, sometimes as a people manager, it is important, and this is why the tips are for you in particular, that it is a bit different role. And everybody, whether you're an employee, any level of management, has absolutely the equal right to be involved in politics and have your candidates that you support. But knowing that your role, just like I'd said, You often can be that safe space in the team. Those words aren't the ones you tend to use. You're that person that people can count on, to come to without judgment. Your other team members should be as well, but this is why you get training for things like this. And so knowing there may be times your team members come to you and you may not feel the same way they do, and you don't have to pretend like you do, but just knowing as a manager, there can be times that your words, for example, if you're vocally supporting one candidate over another, other team members can feel pressured. There can be things like favoritism. If you're supporting a candidate and you're talking about that openly in the office, and some people are celebrating that, other people can feel left out. And so just really being mindful of the way that your actions and words do matter. And while it's important to be able to be as civically involved as you want, making clear, especially when people see something like a manager supporting a candidate, often they can feel a little awkward if they don't support that same one. So just being mindful of that. And that's why I think it can be helpful, to the extent you feel comfortable and it's appropriate, to say to your team vocally that here, no matter who anybody supports, there are things that we have in common, and focusing on that and keeping that in mind for yourself. That as a manager, it is a privilege, and it can feel hard when people are coming to you and bringing all sorts of their problems and how you deal with that and also get your own work done. But knowing they're coming to you because they trust you and they look to you as someone that has advice that they can work through. And so even if that advice to that team member is, if today's such a challenge, you can take the rest of the day off. You can use that for time off, and recognizing there may be people that feel that way. And they need a manager that can hear that and tell them that, and not be like rolling eyes and side texting all the others of like, oh, can you believe what this employee said? That's the role that people often are looking to you as a people manager. So yes, people management can feel challenging sometimes, but whether it's election season or any other time, a lot of people want is calm, stability, and respect. And those are all things that you can deliver and to keep in mind for yourself.